All right, this is the Thursday, October 17th, 2019 meeting of the Mashpee Sewer Commission. Call the meeting to order. It's 6:03 p.m. First item of business is approval of our September 19th, 2019 minutes. And I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read them. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those are approved. Good job. Status of the plan, we haven't begun implementing, obviously, for lack of funds, other than the shellfish propagation. There is a separate proposal for a study at Joint Base Cape Cod, for which the selectmen have submitted a article for the October town meeting to spend $250,000 towards a study of that alternative at the base. Next item on the agenda was going to be...
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Oh, by the way, I should introduce us since you haven't seen some of us before. Joe Lyons is our vice president. I'm Tom Fidallo, the chairman. Brad Pitsley is our clerk, and Kenneth Dunn is our brand-new member. It's his first meeting. So, welcome, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe.
On this $250,000 article to study JBCC, it seems to be off purpose. The purpose should be to continue moving forward, however we have to move forward to solve this pollution problem. So I would suggest to the selectmen that they define the purpose and the scope of it so that it includes, in words to this kind of statement, JBCC study, and the required review expenses for the approved wastewater plan. This will give the selectmen the flexibility to deal with whatever consultants we need to have in regard to JBCC or implementing the plan as it is now written. So that's my suggestion.
All right. Well, that obviously is a suggestion to the selectmen, if they're listening. I haven't seen the text of the article, so I don't know exactly how it's worded, but I do believe that this is $250,000 towards the study, and other towns are going to be putting their money into this study too. So this is all in the charge of the selectmen and particularly the town manager. So I can't speak intelligently on that other than there's your presentation, your request to the selectmen when we get to town meeting, which is Monday night. As I said, we're supposed to have a presentation by our consultants, GHD, on the recommended treatment plant design and site plan for our proposed treatment plant next to the transfer station. Unfortunately, the town's video system is not working, and neither the IT department or the television people can figure out how to fix it. So you have blank screens, and we won't even be able to see their presentation. So if this doesn't get fixed within the next few minutes, we may be looking for a very short meeting. Next item is selection of value engineering consultant. Part of the GHD study includes a review of their work by a value engineering consultant, a separate consulting firm to go over what they've done and make recommendations on how it can make it better or cheaper or whatever. And we have representatives from Weston and Sampson. Okay, why don't you come up for a mic here, introduce yourself, and
Any one of these.
Anyone works.
So I'm Kent Nichols, principal with Weston and Sampson.
Yep.
And, obviously, we put a proposal into you folks for value engineering work for the study for the preliminary phase.
Yep. Now, just, is that mic working, or do you have to get closer to it? I don't know.
The light is on.
Same problem? The light's on the mic.
Pull it closer.
Really?
I don't want to eat the mic.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
All right.
Again, Kent Nichols, principal with Weston and Sampson. We put together a proposal for you folks at your request. Yeah, it seems to be kicking, maybe it's me turning my head.
Don't turn your
I
head.
don't know.
Face
Don't
the
turn your
mic.
head. The key is don't turn your head right. So,
Still doesn't work right.
Obviously, we're looking forward to helping out. We've worked with GHD on some past projects and VE capacity as well, so I think we can help you out.
Right, we got Anastasia Rudenko and Lena Quackenbush here from GHD. They're the primary designers on the project. Jeff Gregg from GHD is also sort of like, what he is, like your boss or something? Any
Project
case,
manager.
one of the things that has come back from GHD that you would have seen on the screen here is that when we advertised the position, which I first submitted to the town manager in July 12th and just got out a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at October for the availability of their plan materials and design materials. Right now, the schedule that they've given us is November 15th for having those materials ready. Does that create any problems for Weston and Sampson in terms of when you get the materials? And I mean, it's
not at
a
all.
week, basically, project, so.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to have you folks ready to give us the information we need to review.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense to rush the value engineering until you're ready to present the right information.
Right. And I was
We'll
hoping,
work with
again, you'd
whatever.
be able to see what we're talking about up here, but unable
Well,
to do
we'll
that
get to it
tonight.
at some point, I'm sure. Right? Yeah,
Yep.
I don't envision any issues from our end. The one thing I would like to do is gather a little bit more information because we're obviously very new to the process and
Yep.
playing catch up. So the more I have, the more we can refine our approach to the value engineering to make sure
I
we
know that
maximize the
one
effectiveness
thing
of
we
that,
can
so.
do is send you a PDF of the presentation that would have been done tonight, and then you guys can get together after the meeting if you want to do anything specific in terms of the discussion. Yes, Joseph?
I just have one question of Ken. I've read the documents that you provided, and it indicates to me, I think that you were involved with the Commons plant, the Mashpee Commons plant. Were you involved in that MBR evaluation?
I do not think so.
All right, that you cited a number of towns and communities around us that you have done work for,
Right.
including work on specifically an MBR system for some of those.
Oh, Town of
accounts.
Bourne is probably the one that was the top of the list.
Say again?
Town of Bourne.
Town of Bourne was one, yes,
There's another one in Plymouth.
yes.
Those are the two closest MBR ones.
Okay, what systems were those?
MBR, that's what he's saying.
Who manufactured the MBR?
So one is designed, and we don't know who the winning bidder is going to be yet, but I
Okay.
believe it's going to be a Xenon system. I believe it's going to be a Xenon system.
Xenon, okay.
That's basically GE, right?
Yeah, GE. It's GE. They were bought by Suez, but that's our to our understanding. Again, the contractor still hasn't submitted the final documents for it, but
Okay.
we're waiting on that. The second one was a bioprocesses cross-flow membrane system.
Okay,
Yep. But we've experienced with a number of other manufacturers as well, so.
okay. There's hopeful flashing on the screen.
I saw some
behind it above
flash,
you.
that's great.
Hopeful flashing. Ooh. Well, like I said, if we can get it on before we run out of stuff to talk about, then maybe we can do the show. Uh-oh.
Wow.
Hey, is that you guys?
That is us. We are
Well,
up
what do
and
you
running.
know? All right.
Ken, what would you like to summarize your basic bid?
So really, it's response to your request, and I
Right.
think we tried to be very responsive to that. I think what I guess I would point out is the best way to get an effective value engineering approach is to work pretty closely with the owner and the design team to identify what information you could present, and then we tune our work around that so that
Yes.
we can make effective use of your budget to get the review and also give you the most feedback at this point in time. The preliminary phases really can be an effective time to get feedback to the design team, especially if there's things that maybe we could help them enhance or steer a little bit. But for the most part, it's very heavily dependent on how much information you can present to us. And then my job is to make sure that our team comes in ready to give you the best value in that short period of time with our review.
What size of a company are you?
So Weston Sampson is just under 700 people now. We're a Massachusetts firm that was founded back in 1899. We are mostly constituted as we were over the many, many years we've done it. We have done past work with Mashpee years and years back, and as we have with many communities in New England because we've been around for so long. We have been a strong water and wastewater firm, and wastewater is a big part of our work, but we now do transportation, a lot of other things, and honestly, all up and down the eastern coast.
All right, what's your gross sales on an annual basis?
Last year was our first year at over 100 million, so we do about 120 million we expect to hit this year.
Okay,
So we're dropping their bucket. All right. Now, you guys also did work on a number of private treatment plants in Mashpee, I know.
We actually,
Village and
one
fixing
segment of
some of
our
the
work
plants.
is actually construction. We have three principal companies. One is the engineering firm, which I represent and will use primarily for this. But we also have an operations firm that does full-time operations of smaller plants. Essentially, in our proposal, I've proposed to actually use one of our operators who actually operates a plant for another Cape community that GHD did all the design for. And so that gives us some good feedback.
That's Chatham,
as
right?
well, for the Chatham system,
Yep.
right? And then we also have a construction group which builds these same size plants, and in fact, built one of the plants that we also designed. So we're actually able to cover a lot of ground with the forces we have, so.
Yeah. I know that your proposal met all the requests in our RFQ, so. And they've done a lot of work for the town of Mashpee, not for wastewater. Well, actually, they actually did a wastewater plan for the town, preliminary wastewater plan in
Way back.
1990 or 1989.
Yeah, I think at the very beginning of my career, I did a little bit of helping on the Board of Health stuff we did, but it was preliminary studies way back, so.
Yep,
yeah.
that's how I met Mike Scipione. He was
Yep.
actually like the junior to Mike Hanlon, so now
Yep.
he's the CEO, so.
Yeah, I actually worked with the guy who preceded Mike on the work in Mashpee, Fred Sino. I don't know if you remember Fred.
Yep, I remember the name.
Yep.
But it's good to know the people that actually are the CEO of the company, so that's good for us. All right. Well, it looks like, and unless you've got more, unless you guys have anything to add, any other questions for Kent?
thank you, Ken.
My only request is, can I move back so I can see better, so.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
I'm more than willing to answer other
Yeah.
questions later on, but I just
Sure.
want to hear what the folks have to say. Thank you.
There,
I'm
you can sit over there.
going to go sit in the front, yeah.
You can sit over there in a comfortable chair. Let the peon sit out on the hard chair. I'm sorry, Selectman. All right, so it looks like we have a screen going. I don't know if we're going to need that, Mike, but in any case. We have the screen going. Is this coming through to the television? Okay, so we're going to, now that we do have the system operating and don't have to cancel the rest of the meeting, have a presentation by GHD. Is our primary engineering consultant for the wastewater plan since they were first started in 1999 and been working for 20 years for us, of their preliminary plan for the Site 4 treatment plant design and the site plan. That's the so-called transfer station site. And who's doing the talking?
Both of us.
Okay, they're both
Yeah.
talking. Lena on the left and Anastasia on the right there. The show is yours.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm Anastasia Budenko. I'm a project engineer with GHD, and I'm here with Lena Quackenbush, another project engineer with GHD. And we're here today to give an update on the design development of the Mashpee Water Resource Recovery Facility. So we're going to start talking about the updated site plan, beginning with the phasing of the plan and how this project fits into it. Talk about the access for the site, the buffer zones that have been incorporated into the site, and then also to put the site into context, we're going to do an analysis of buffer comparison between this proposed site and some of the existing treatment facilities, both in Mashpee and immediately adjoining it. We'll then talk about the processes that are being proposed in the facility and measures that are being designed to mitigate any potential noises, odors, and also discuss the chemicals that are being used in the process. We'll give an update on the engineer's opinion of probable capital costs, and then an update of the schedule. So to begin with, the Site 4 wastewater facility is part of the approved watershed nitrogen management plan for the town of Mashpee. This is a plan that's divided into 5 phases, and construction of this facility and collection system immediately above and below the facility, as indicated in pink, is part of Phase 1. In future phases of the plan, there is additional flow that would be brought to the facility. To aid in the constructability of the facility, the flows from those 5 phases were divided into 4 equidistant construction stages. So if you go to the next one.
Equidistant?
Equal volume, equal flow.
Okay. There we go.
So the plan has a very heavy shellfish component, and in order to meet TMDL compliance in the town, so to reduce the nitrogen in order to restore the coastal estuaries, the plan is contingent on how well those shellfish do. So over on the left, you have if the shellfish are as 100% effective as they're called in the plan, in order to meet the TMDLs for the estuaries, we will need to implement Phase 1, which is that initial collection system that I just showed, and a portion of Phase 2. And then if the shellfish don't perform as anticipated, future phases will be implemented and additional flow will be brought to the facility. So as we discuss the site layout today, we'll be talking about the Stage 1 infrastructure and also the accommodations that were made in order to provide flexibility for future phases on the site.
All right, so I am now going to describe the preliminary site layout as we have it here. As Anastasia mentioned, what we're trying to show here is what's going to be built in Stage 1 while also allocating space for full build out on this site. So if you look in blue, those are the buildings that we're proposing to be built in Stage 1, but we've outlined in the green, but with outlines, shapes, the potential to expand that. So the blue building all the way to the left is the preliminary treatment building. That would not need to be expanded in future phases, but the blue building to the right is the process building, and I will explain more about what happens in each of those buildings, but that would be expanded in future stages. You can also see here in yellow, these are the effluent recharge beds that are needed for Stage 1. There is a potential to increase the number of effluent recharge beds up into the right-hand side of the screen while staying within this red buffer in later stages. But as we'll talk about more, we will be doing further tests once after the facility is operational to see if there might be ways to increase the loading to the beds so that all of that space would not necessarily need to be used in future stages. Going forward, I want to show the 2 entrances that we're proposing. So in blue, we have the proposed typical use entrance. And right now what we're doing is we're proposing using the current Mashpee transfer station entrance as the typical use so that another entrance wouldn't have to be built. We are in the process of verifying if extra entrances are needed for emergency vehicles, so that would be dependent on that. In red, we're showing a proposed construction entrance, and this entrance would just be a temporary entrance while the facility is being constructed so that there wouldn't be quite as much traffic impacting the transfer station during
And you might
construction.
note that that was required or requested by the DPW director, that second construction entrance. So
Exactly.
Otherwise,
yeah.
we wouldn't have come through the buffer.
At this one, I want to draw attention to the green outlining the entire facility. We're proposing to have a vegetative buffer around the entire facility, including all the effluent recharge beds and also on the side of the facility that is on the property up against the property of the Mashpee transfer station. These are just two examples of possible vegetative buffer plants that could be used. The idea is just to get a plant that is very full, that you can't see through as well, and then to plant them quite close to each other just to have a bit of a visual buffer from that.
That's, of course, to supplement the forest that's around the property.
Exactly.
The understory especially, so you
Yeah.
don't see through it.
Exactly. This is just drawing attention to how large the buffers are. Mass DEP recommends a 50-foot buffer around a wastewater treatment facility to the nearest properties. And so what we've done at the site is we've included a 150-foot buffer around the entire site to all surrounding properties. And then we've increased that buffer to 200 and 300 feet respectively to the closest properties.
And you might note that some of these changes, like the 200-foot buffer, were the result of the public hearing we had on July 18th and got some response. And
Yeah.
so we've done everything that we were asked to do and said we would do from that meeting.
Yeah, we started with a 100-foot buffer and have reconfigured the site in order to accommodate. So as I'd mentioned, we wanted to look at how does this site compare to existing treatment facilities in Mashpee. What's shown on the left is the proposed Site 4 facility. And both a 200-foot and a 500-foot around the process building, which is where the majority of the treatment occurs. On the right is the Southport wastewater treatment facility. It's a treatment facility of similar size to the proposed Stage 1. And as you can see, within the 500-foot radius, you do have a number of residential properties as well as a golf course. So we'll keep the proposed Site 4 facility for comparison on all of these slides. On the right is Katuitt Meadows, which is an MBR facility. That's the same technology that we're proposing for Site 4. And as you can see, this is also located in a residential neighborhood. Stratford Ponds is an amphidraum system, also in a residential neighborhood. New Seabury wastewater treatment facility is a larger facility than the Stage 1 Site 4 facility. It's also located in a residential neighborhood, and you can see that the golf course is within the 500-foot radius of the building in the center. That's the treatment facility. And this is Mashpee Village wastewater treatment facility, immediately north of Route 151. And the two facilities on the right, the one on the left is the Mashpee Commons facility. It's a similar size to Site 4, the same technology, an MBR facility, and you can see the majority of the processes are in the buildings in the radius, and then to the north are the effluent disposal beds. And then to the right of that is the Windchime Point wastewater treatment facility.
At this point, I want to walk through just what the major components will be in the proposed facility, just to give you a better idea of what is actually going on there. So the first stage, once the raw wastewater has entered the facility, is for it to go through preliminary treatment. And during this process, the sand, the grit, some of the larger materials all get screened out. And that allows for some protection of the downstream equipment and processes. After that,
Is that a closed?
Yep, and so that will all happen within a building, the building that I showed to the left of the site plan. The water will then be piped underground to the second building, the process building. At this point, secondary and tertiary treatment will happen, and this is where the biological process happens. So the bugs are actually breaking down the waste in the water and consuming the nitrogen. And then in this design, this is also where the membrane acts as a physical separation process. From there, the flow will flow into disinfection, and that's where any remaining pathogens get killed. And we are proposing using UV light to kill those pathogens. From there, the flow again goes through a underground pipe out to the effluent recharge beds, and it is allowed to percolate down back into the groundwater.
What's the quality of that water, affluent recharge?
It'll be treated down to the limit of technology to 3 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen, and will be disinfected. So it'll be a very high level of effluent.
Doesn't that process also reduce the phosphates to 1/10 or a milligram per liter?
It does reduce the phosphates. It also does take out contaminants of emergent concern. So it's what you're doing is it's a physical process where you're essentially sucking it through very small pore sizes in a straw. So a lot of the bigger contaminants that are in wastewater will get separated from your effluent.
And then biosolids will be removed from the treatment process and taken off-site.
And that's basically the solids that are left after you clean the
Yeah.
water.
These
The
are
water
for your
goes one
straw,
direction, the solids go to.
Yep,
the whole
yeah, and I
container.
can show more pictures of that later on. So this is a process schematic, and it's just showing visually how this process works. So in the first building, we'll have the preliminary treatment. All the screenings, all the grit will be removed there. Then it will flow into the tanks where the biological processes will happen. Those tanks will be covered, they'll be in a building, and then they'll go into the MBR tanks. Followed again by disinfection, and solids will be removed. So taking this schematic, I want to compare it to the site layout. This is the same picture I showed earlier, just zoomed in on the 2 buildings. So preliminary treatment will happen in this left building, all contained within that building, and then the water will flow underground into the second building, the process building. On the lower part of that process building, that's where those tanks will be. And then it'll flow through that and into disinfection before flowing underground again to the effluent recharge beds. So this is the preliminary treatment building. We have a rendering of what the design looks like, and then a floor plan as well. So just to walk you through how it works within the floor plan, the wastewater gets pumped up into this building, and then it flows first through a larger screen that removes the bigger materials, and that's on the right-hand side of the building. Then it flows through a vortex grit system, and that removes the sand, all the smaller particles. Then we have fine screens, which remove any remaining screening materials before it flows out and underground from the building. On the left of this building, that's the electrical room, which we've separated from all the screenings and the larger equipment. Just to note on the building, those bigger window-looking sections of the building, those are actually translucent panels, and we're proposing using those because they allow some natural light into the building while still having a slightly opaque look, and you can actually remove those if you need to remove the equipment for any reason, and that allows us to have less of industrial look, less big doors, and more of a window look on the buildings. So you'll see that throughout all the buildings we've proposed.
I just wanted to make a point on the height. I'm telling you to keep it down. The height limit for single-family homes in Mashpee is 35 feet. I know mine is 32, so this is quite a bit shorter than most homes in town.
Yep. And we're trying to use the peak height within buildings to be able to pick the equipment up in that, which allows us to reduce the overall scale of the building some by using that space. So next, we go into the process building. We again have a rendering of what that looks like in stage 1. If you look at the rendering, the part that is on the left with the translucent panels down the side, that is where those tanks will be. And those will be covered, and then they'll be in that building. That is for stage 1, and then what we're proposing is stage 2 would be added to the side of that, and stage 3 and 4 could be expanded on the other side of the center portion. Then the larger portion in the middle, that's where things like the chemicals are stored, the pumps are, the blowers are, and also where the UV disinfection will be. I also just want to show on this up in the top center, that's an example of what a membrane actually looks like. So what they really are is pretty much they're straws with very little holes in them. And they suck only the clean water in through them and out, and any other parts that can't fit through those small holes are left outside. So it's purely just physically pulling small clean water through. And then on the right upper side, that's an example of what a UV disinfection light module looks like. And how that works is the water just flows through those lights and the pathogens get killed in the water as it flows through. So as we mentioned, we are proposing a robust odor control system for this facility. And how we're doing that, first of all, is by incorporating all of these processes inside buildings. Then the air in those buildings is all going to be piped out to a odor control unit. What we're doing is we're proposing a engineered biofilter. And basically what this is it's a engineered composite material that allows microbes to grow on it, and those microbes actually eat and consume the odorous parts of the air as it flows through them. So that in the top right corner, that's an example of a odor control unit, the biofilter itself. We are proposing actually having it be underground. So in the lower right-hand corner, we've showed an example of what the covers look like for one of those units, and they'd be pretty much at grade level. And then we've also just showed that the odorous air will be coming from the preliminary treatment building, from the reactors, and also from the biosolids holding tanks. And all of that will be piped underground to this biofilter. So all of that air will be cleaned before being released. As far as noise control, we understand that that is also a concern, obviously, at this site. So we are working to find ways to minimize that, again, by putting all the processes inside of buildings. That's going to greatly reduce that. We are also working with acoustical engineers internally within our firm to get more architectural features that we can incorporate to reduce the noise concerns and noise production, such as noise control or canceling panels, increased insulation in the ceiling, and different other techniques just to keep any noise control issues down.
If I could just interject from our point of view, we're going overboard in terms of the odor control and the noise control because of the concerns, but as you saw from the air photos, we have one house within 500 feet of our project every other treatment plant in town has got multiple houses, if not dozens of houses within that 500-foot radius, and some of them are, for example, the New Sebring one is twice the size of the Mashpee plant, and they do not have odor control, other than Willow Bend, which we didn't see, and nobody seems to have a problem out there. So we're belt and suspenders on top of our giant buffers.
So, as I've mentioned previously, the system is a biological and a physical treatment process, but there are some small amounts of chemicals that will be at the facility. And those are mostly just for cleaning of the equipment, really. And so we wanted to walk through what those chemicals were and what they're going to be used for. So the first one is sodium hypochlorite. That is pretty much household cleaning bleach. And that will be used for cleaning the membranes and the UV modules intermittently. Then there's also citric acid, small amounts of citric acid, which is a component of lemon juice. And that is also used for cleaning the same equipment. We are going to be using supplemental carbon as a source for our secondary treatment tanks. We're proposing Micro C, which is a proprietary technology. It's most similar to glycerin as a carbon source for treatment. And then the last one.
It's not a liquid, it's a solid form. It's like a powder, right? Because we saw an example of that at Mashpee Commons treatment plant, right? Other treatment plants have been using methanol, which is an explosive liquid, so they have stored in separate rooms and bomb-proof shelters. But we're not using that. We're using just this solid form of carbon to add to the process.
Yeah, that's a big reason of why we proposed Micro C over methanol. And the last one is sodium hydroxide, which will be used in small amounts as a pH adjustment for the treatment facility.
So for non-scientists, that means how acidic or non-acidic.
Sorry,
you need a certain level of acidity in the water to have it all
Right.
work right, so that just keeps it at that level.
Yep, it buffers this. Yep.
So as Linda had mentioned, there are biosolids that are generated by the process. These will be stored in an aerated and covered tank. The reason that we aerate the tank is to keep the liquid from going anaerobic, which is what would cause potential odors. So you add air to it to keep it from smelling. It's also covered, and we'll be taking the air from the headspace between the water level and the cover and ducting it to the biofilter unit. When the biosolids are connected from the facility, they'll be connected to something similar to this pipe connection. So this will actually be in a tank instead of on a building. But it's connected to the tank so that nothing is open to the environment, and that is how the biosolids will be removed. One of the more odorous processes in a wastewater treatment facility is the processing of sludge. So for this facility, we're not recommended that it be processed on site, rather it just be trucked off-site and processed in a different location. So once the water has been cleaned, it's recharged to the groundwater through effluent sand beds. And these are two examples of sand beds on Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard. This is a method to recharge the water to the groundwater. They've been designed for 7 gallons per day per square foot, which is what the state allows us to design to based on hydraulic loading tests that were done at this site. Those hydraulic loading tests were very favorable. So as Lena mentioned, once the plant is actually constructed and we have effluent, you can do testing to see if you can increase the loading rate in order to minimize the overall footprint of the site for future phases. This slide shows the probable costs for the 3 components of Phase 1. The collection system costs were developed as part of a project in 2015 for the Phase 1 collection system, and they're based on a primarily gravity system. And then the costs for the treatment facility and the recharge facility were developed as part of this project. The three components of the cost are presented in 2019 dollars. Once a construction schedule for the project has been set, these costs will need to be adjusted to the midpoint of construction and to any outside factors such as tariffs or effects of bidding climate. In terms of schedule, so we've brought drawings today that we'll be giving to the sewer commissioners for their review and comments. Once those comments have been received, we'll prepare a review package for the VE team. We're anticipating getting that to you by November 15th, and it'll be comprised of basis of design memos outlining the methodology for how all these processes were developed, the drawings, and the engineer's opinion of probable costs. The VE review will take place in November 2019, and then we'll prepare a memorandum documenting the comments that were received and our responses to them.
And that is basically, and at that point, you'll have completed your contract and will be done for now, since
Yes.
there's no more money. Just one thing, if you noticed, anybody has paid attention to the plan that was released in 2015, the numbers for Phase 1 were significantly lower than this. They were actually projected to 2017 based on the engineering record. And obviously, they've increased quite a bit since, although it's 2 years worth of increase. One's a projection, one's a right now, right? About $2 million of the costs were because of these additional odor control and other special things we're doing to reduce any kind of even conceptual impacts on any of the neighborhoods. I'd just like to point out that you mentioned that we did the groundwater sampling. There seemed to be some shock in even the selectmen that, wow, we going to do this on this property. Well, it was actually 2011 that the selectmen gave us permission to do the testing on that property. And at about the same time, we actually had an archaeological survey done by a public archaeology lab of the site, which showed there were no particular resources. So this shouldn't be news to anybody, certainly not the Board of Selectmen, because they've been involved, actually, since about 8 or 9 years ago. But in any case, one other thing I'd like to point out, some people have said, well, why don't you put it in an industrial zone? Well, the town of Mashpee does not own a single piece of property that is not conservation land set aside by the Cape Cod Commission as part of a development of regional impact. We do not own a single piece of industrially zoned property. We did own one, which was at the back of the Mashpee Industrial Park, something that I negotiated with the developers back then for a zoning change, and that was about 30 years ago. The town turned that over to the EDIC. By the way, I should mention, that site was actually studied. It's a $45,000 study by the firm of Goldberg Zino, did a hydrologic study of that site, which was paid for by 9 proposed developers around the Rotary area, with the money passing through Mashpee Commons as the lead. And what happened was that the 1990, 91, whenever it was, recession happened, and the vast majority of those projects disappeared. And rather than, and this had been the original concept that the Sewer Commission had, was using private funds that were going to go to build all of these private plants that we ended up getting anyways, and put that towards the municipal facility and with excess capacity that we could use for the rest of the public. And that was 9 developers that were going to help do that in the Rotary area, and there were 3 developers in East Mashpee, Willow Bend, Stratford Ponds, and a condominium project called Dolphin Bay, which is actually the property that the Ashers Heights subdivision is now on. They all chipped their money into the planning for a treatment plant on the transfer station site. Oh, in that case, it was where the police firing range is now, right along Meeting House Road. So we had 2 groups of private developers, again, that were going to help us build plants for cheap, and the recession killed a number of those projects, and we also had a vote at town meeting for the one at the transfer station, after we had completed a full environmental impact report to the state on that project. It was about, 2 inches thick. And the former planning board chairman made a statement that, well, that's in the Mashpee River watershed. I mean, that's going to make the river. No, I mean, we're cleaning up the water that's already in the watershed. And in any case, we got an unfavorable vote at town meeting back in 1991 on that too. So meanwhile, here we are 30 years later and, still haven't done anything. So this is the first recommended piece of our plan. It's been out there for a long time in terms of this location. And just, if you haven't read the plan, this is phase 1. You saw that there is a phase 2 that includes much of the rest of Mashpee Neck, as well as some stuff on the west side of the Mashpee River. And I think some of it going to Joint Base Cape Cod. But if the shellfish does what it's supposed to do, according to Rick York, and the results so far are favorable, then we shouldn't have to go past phase 2. May not even have to complete phase 2 of the plan. So when you saw all those diagrams about, percent of shellfish working and how many phases we have to go, if it works, we don't even get to the end of phase 2 when we're done supposedly meeting our targets. The reason that the plan is laid out in 5 phases with going all the way out to sewering lots and lots of areas is because we had to demonstrate to the state that if the shellfish that we had an option available, that if the shellfish didn't work like they're working and they're supposed to work, then we had a backup plan to actually use sewering for a much larger area than we would have otherwise. And for Kent's benefit, the reason we're using MBR here, originally there was MBR and SBR. We wanted the MBR because of the potential for cleaning up some of the contaminants of emerging concern, as well as we didn't want anything that involved a lot of open tanks. So they were directed to do MBRs. So don't come in and say, well, it'd be cheaper to do SBRs. And they figured the cost was just about the same anyways, but that's just for your information. We told them to do it because that's the best technology available. And
Any questions?
It's just on that. Well, it's not a public hearing, but
There's so few here tonight, why not?
all right. Oh, Mary, you want to step up here?
Hi. Mary Wagon, 35 Ashumet Road. So you're going to have...
I would note the chairman of the planning board.
I'm also the
We know
chairman
you.
of the planning board. My pleasure. So you're going to truck off the solid waste. How many trucks are going to go through the facility a day?
Oh, it's not a day, it's a couple per month.
It depends on how big you make the tank. Right now, it's projected to be 1 a week.
1 a week. Okay.
So,
Yeah, it depends on a couple of things of what equipment eventually gets chosen and flows and loads, but yeah, that's what our estimate
And
is right now.
how much staff do you need for that facility?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that we didn't highlight in the presentation was right now we've looked at a couple of other facilities, and it depends on how this facility is chosen to be run, but a lot of them of this size only have 1 or maybe 2 people coming in. We have designed a operations building, so if that is something in future phases that the town wants to have a full building that has more personnel in it, that is a potential that they could choose.
and on that subject, the commission's plan, certainly unless things get really larger, is to use contractors to do the work, not hire additional
Okay.
town employees. We need 1 town employee, basically, our sewer commission administrator, to administer the contracts
Okay.
with those contractors. But other than that, we're not planning on hiring a big department.
Most of these facilities are very automated. They have integrated alarm systems that if anything is tipsy, it goes off. And commercial person hired to visit it at least once or twice or 3 times a week anyway, they are automatically called in to deal with any of the issues. And that person may be monitoring as many as 10 or 15 plants, not only in Mashpee, but in the surrounding area. And there are a couple of companies available that are doing that now. Because
Including
there are
Weston and
more and
Sampson.
more modern systems being put in.
Okay, thank you. It was a great presentation.
Okay. Any board questions or comments on the site plan?
Could you go back to the screen that indicated how much discharge we were going to potentially have in Phase 1?
Was that quantified? I didn't see it.
Yeah,
It's a slide that had the volume.
There we go. 7 gallons per square foot, 70,000 square feet active. So
Well,
what
that's the loading rate per square foot of the sand filter beds. It's not the actual flow from the plant. That's
understand that.
practically 150,000 gallons in Phase 1, right?
So those sand beds are typically handled to be able to handle your highest month with
Right.
one out of service, to provide flexibility so that if
Okay.
one needs to be taken down for maintenance. So that's how you derive the flow rate for those beds.
What I'm saying is not the flow rate, but the
Yeah.
capacity of
Yes.
the bed would be then, as designed, the 4 that you have in this preliminary design, could handle up to 450,000 gallons. 70,000 square feet times 7 gallons a day. Right?
Which would be the maximum month capacity. So it's an average of 120, yeah, and then the maximum month is about that range, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I said the maximum capacity.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, one
clarify.
thing I would add, Joe, and I've had some discussions with
That's
GHC about this,
significantly
is
more
that,
than we're planning on in the initial phase.
oh yeah, should work comfortably, but
Like
one
you
of,
say, you could take half of them out of operation and still be able to run the operation.
Yeah, so you do have the flexibility to take them out of service.
right, and it was sort of touched on about after we get the plant working, we can look again at the loading rates. I should note that when that study was done in 2011, the loading rate that they came up with was up to 70 gallons per square foot per day. So this is 1/10 of what the loading
Potential.
study indicated in terms of the soils on the site, but it's very conservative, the way the DEP wants it to be. And once the plant is operating and they can do actual, testing, I would be shocked if we ever have to go beyond these 4, especially since we're never going to get to phase 5 anyways, because I have faith in the shellfish. So we'll just look at these same sand filter beds, and it's my opinion, even though we have the safety for the additional room out there that was in dashed lines, that we're never going to get bigger than this in terms of the sand filter beds.
One point that isn't obvious, but everybody in this room, once they think about it, it will become obvious. During the summer, we have twice the flow that we have during the winter because we have twice as many people. And this design is incorporating the maximum flow rates that we need to have in each of the phases. So actually, we'll be operating substantially below the design limits. And this allows us to accumulate, as we have to, maybe around the 4th of July, into tanks that the following weeks would be processing off on a continuous basis, as most of these facilities operate best at a predetermined rate. And it's all automatically controlled depending on how much you have in the holding tanks headed for the processing facility.
Just from my planning perspective as former town planner, the areas that we are sewering in Phase 1 and basically most of Phase 2 are not that seasonal. That's one reason, that was one of the standards by which we picked these things for phases. We were looking for year-round areas. We didn't want to waste money on, something that was just a half-year flow. So we're not doing New Seabury, Papaneset, the south end of town with this very high seasonality. Right now, we're not doing anything around the ponds where there's some seasonality. We're doing basically year-round neighborhoods. And within that area, you have some seasonal places like Willabin, but they have their own treatment plant, and that's where they always sort of stay. Same thing with Southport, fairly seasonal. New Seabury, obviously, very seasonal. And Mashpee Commons is seasonal too, because of the kind of operation, a lot less flow in the winter based on histories. So one of the reasons this is phase one, aside from directly going to the Mashpee River to try to achieve fixing that after 43 years of talking about it, was because that area is almost entirely year-round single-family homes. And we get the best bang for the buck in terms of the amount of houses we have to hook up to get the amount of
I
nitrogen
don't know
out of the
about your
watershed.
house, Tom, but
Yeah.
2 of us live in it 9 months of the year, and the other 3 months, we could have 3 to 6 people in it.
Yeah, but you're
In
way,
addition to
you're
us.
way down in phase 5 that we're never going to get
Doesn't
to.
matter.
You're
What
shi-
I'm saying
You're
is.
taking care of my
is a
shellfish.
substantial increase in the summer months, even
Overall.
on the year-round homes,
Yeah,
and that's all covered.
yeah. And the town itself, the year-round population is around 15,000. The summer peak population, like the peak day population, is around 33,000. So the town does double, but again, these particular neighborhoods in the northern end of town are much less seasonal than that, so.
Mr.
Again,
Chair.
that's why we're there. Yes,
Can we get that on, can we get the presentation posted on the website?
which website? The sewer commission
town's-
website, certainly. We'll put it on.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I think this was, a lot of people have been waiting to see this. Obviously, some people must have had time, scheduling conflicts because they're not here, but, I mean, this is
Being
going to.
charitable.
This is going to answer a lot of people's questions.
And that's why we, for the first time in a couple of years, we're having this meeting televised so that
That's great.
people can go back, either watching it on TV now, which I told Tom O'Hara to do, or come back and I think it takes a couple of weeks. I can be corrected by the TV guy, but the recorded meetings go on the town website in full. So
Yeah.
this whole meeting will be on the website, including those presentations.
Yeah, those slides, that would be great. Thanks.
And if anybody wants their own copy of a PDF copy of this PowerPoint, I can send it. Just give me your email addresses. Well, I know your email. I know, but I don't know his. Are you the guy from the newspaper?
The guy.
He keeps making us look bad, so I've resisted learning his name. I actually don't know your email. Actually, I probably do, because did you get a copy of the agenda in the mail, in email?
Maybe, I can't remember, I get a lot of agendas.
Oh, that's how much you care about the sewer commission. Okay, well, you can give it to me after the meeting.
I can also find it online, so.
You can find what online?
Sometimes. Or
Yeah, hopefully it's online, yeah. Yeah. All right, but like I said, if you want the PowerPoint copy, which you indicated you did, give me your email address, and I'll make sure not only do you get the agenda, you'll get the PDF of that. I know Mary's because, I've worked with the planning board for years. I know David's, so hopefully we're all set. Okay, throw it quickly. Come on, you're on TV. It's the back of your head. Yeah, okay. I can do that. All right. Anybody else? Ryan Spencer. Okay, that's the name. I'll get it eventually. You sort of dropped in on us in the middle of things about, a month ago? All right. Moving on, unless there's anything else you have from GHD? All right. Status of other tasks. Oops. Is that tape recorder something stop or? No? Oh, okay, that's somebody else making noise. All right, a shellfish report. I did get a call from Rick York just prior to the meeting, and Rick indicates that they are currently seeding the Great River and Little River with cohogs, and he also pointed out that the oystering season will begin November 1st, so that the oysters that they've been growing in the Mashpee River will be brought around the corner to where people like me can go and rake them up and enjoy oyster dinners. And that's his report. Budget issues, I took that, what was in there off, because that was all stuff that happened a long time ago. Voucher approval, we did have a voucher dated December 21st from GHD in the amount of $44,000 under the authority that was given to me by the commissioners and through state law. I approved that, and it's in the hands of the town manager's office. And I know there's been a backup, because I know that your indication, like, we may earn this much, and we've only got this much in your actual reports, but it goes from the town manager's office to the Cape Cod Commission, because this is Cape Cod Commission money, not Mashpee taxpayer money, that's being used to pay for this study. And it takes them a while, I guess, to process the request and send the money to Mashpee, and then Mashpee takes a while to process the check and send it to you. So you know you get it eventually, but that was $44,000 there. There's nothing new on the IMAs with the other towns, as I indicated last time, that Sandwich has passed this 2% tax surcharge to begin funding their wastewater facilities. And Falmouth has authorized $10,500 as its share of a contract with GHD to study and recommend allocation of nitrogen responsibility among Mashpee, Falmouth, and Sandwich in anticipation of developing an intermunicipal agreement regarding Wacoit Bay. I should have pointed out we have an intermunicipal agreement regarding Papaneset Bay with Barnstable, Sandwich, and Mashpee that's in place. Do you know anything about that study that this $10,500 is going for? Because I don't have any recollection of anybody asking Mashpee for a piece of money for that.
I'll have to check with Greg's the lead on that.
So just,
Jeff.
okay. All right. But at this point, maybe Falmouth's going to pay the whole thing. All right, and no news regarding existing or private wastewater treatment plants. I'll point out Mashpee Clean Waters Committee. They do online discussions, the presentations from various people. Their next online discussion is next Tuesday, the 22nd. Oh, thank you. Next Tuesday, the 22nd at 7 o'clock. The thing is, they have a Facebook page, and through that Facebook page, you can get to the Zoom address, and they use Zoom to hold these online meetings. It's okay. And I know Dave Wheaton's been participating in those. I saw his name. This is the first one that signed up for next week, as a matter of fact. That was the second one. But in any case. Good, all right. And there's been, I think the last one had about 22 people online asking questions, and the last presentation was basically about the shellfish program. The presentation next week is going to be about fertilizers, nitrogen, what gets put on the ground. And then we have a person sitting there. I will recognize him.
Good evening. My name's Eric Peterson. This is my wife, Dawn, with me tonight. We are here representing the Mashpee Clean Waters Group.
Okay, great.
We live at 112 Wading Place Road. We'd like to congratulate Mr. Whedon on his victory. Thank you, sir. You have our support. And, yeah, as Mr. Fadula said, thank you, Tom.
Fudala. Wait a second.
Fudala.
No, you don't get away with that on
As
TV.
Mr. Fudala said, we have a Facebook group. We have about 273 members currently, some from the town of Barnstable, some from the town of Mashpee. And
And when you say Barnstable, this is focused on Papaneset Bay mainly.
well,
so
we
you
are
got people from Katuitt.
centered probably around Pompanesett Bay as a group, mostly, but spread out to Wacoit Bay, Shoestring Bay, or Katuitt, and
And you've been in contact with the fellow from the other side of the bay that has his own group going?
yes, Save Shoestring Bay or something like that.
Yeah.
We're in contact with everybody. We're friendly. We welcome everybody to join our group. You can find out more about us on Facebook, Mashpee Clean Waters, and we appreciate your good work, ladies. Thank you, and sir. And we want you to know that you have our support. The Sewer Commission has our support. Mr. Whedon has our support. And we will have a
Sewer
presence at
Commission
town
better
meeting.
have Mr. Whedon's support.
So thank you. Thank you all for the work you're doing, and we're with you.
All right, thank you very much. That was encouraging and well appreciated. There is another schedule of meetings that's happening. The selectmen are having meetings on wastewater. Not entirely sure why, but in any case, I believe their next scheduled meeting is October 28th and then they've got one in November, I think it may be the 15th, and then one on December 9th. Yeah, do you have the schedule, Mary? I'm looking it up. Oh, okay.
There's nothing online yet.
I think it's November 26th. December 9th.
Okay, so,
What was the October date?
Oh, it's October 28th.
October 28th, November 26th, and December 9th, right. And hopefully they'll be focusing on how to pay for this stuff. I saw that one of them was supposed to be about the site plan. Well, we've already got a site plan, so not sure. People should understand that under the town charter and the town's bylaws, the design and construction and operation of wastewater facilities in town is entirely the domain of the Sewer Commission, not the Board of Selectmen. They appoint us, but similar to, they don't tell the Conservation Commission how to vote on wetland permits or the ZBA on how to vote on variances. It is our sole authority to design, build, and operate wastewater facilities and collection systems, and as well as to decide whether or not we're going to charge betterments and what the fees are. We actually do have one fee that's been set by the Sewer Commission, and that's for the Breezy Acres and the adjacent affordable housing projects that is tied in through a municipal sewer, which is basically our only little sewer that we have, to the high school treatment plant. So the Sewer Commission actually had a meeting to set a fee for that process. And at some point in the future, when there's more people tied in, we'll have to set a new fee because it has to be an equal fee per gallon for everybody that's served by the sewer. So right now it's a special deal for them, but in any case, I just wanted to make that clear because I get a little concerned about what goes on at selectmen meetings where we're not allowed to speak, and it's actually our domain, so. In any case, I'm going to get in trouble for that, I'm sure, but in any case, that's the fact. And then anything else? Anything unanticipated? Nope. Anything else? All right. I don't have any correspondence under correspondence, so last item on the agenda is looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at 7:10.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Where's Jeff tonight?
Jeff had to take the night off.
Oh, no. Who gave him a night off?
He needed one.
He's got,
I figured with the two of us.
yep.
We'll tell him he was missed though.
Oh, yeah, what happened? Weren't you going to apply to join the commission? Did you send a letter to the selectmen? Okay, I was wondering what happened.